Hello, I am Victor Netes from Moscow Technical University of Communications and Informatics. The name of my paper is Dependability Measures for Access Networks and Their Evaluation. Few words about motivation of the work. Dependability is an important factor for communication networks. To solve dependability assurance problems, it is necessary to select appropriate dependability measures. The purpose of the paper is to analyze such measures for access networks and give recommendations for their usage. Here you can see the outline of my presentation. This slide presents the definition of dependability from the international standards. According to the standards on communication network dependability, there are two viewpoints, from the perspective of network end users and from the network operator perspective. Both of them should be used for dependability assurance. The most commonly used dependability measure is availability. Here you can see its definition and basic ways of its calculation. One of the standards on communication network dependability introduced end-to-end and full-end network availability. The first one is really the availability, and the second one is calculated using the formula shown in the screen. Strictly speaking, it is not actually an availability. An interesting dependability measure called failure impact was introduced for access networks. Here you can see its definition and explanation for its use. This measure gives a view from operator's point of view. It takes into account the number of customers disconnected due to failures. However, it has some drawbacks. An important point to take into account is the possibility of both complete and partial failures. Here you can see examples for passive optical network. all traditional dependability measures, for example availability, do not take into account this difference between values. There are dependability measure that was specifically introduced to account for this difference. It is the effectiveness retention ratio. Here you can see the standards containing this measure. This slide presents the definition and basic properties of the effectiveness retention ratio. Here you can see the possible ways to define and calculate this measure for access networks. And finally, the conclusions. The main recommendation are the following. For users' point of view, it is recommended to use traditional end-to-end availability. For operators' point of view, the most appropriate measure is the effectiveness retention ratio. It is shown that the full end network availability is actually a special case of this measure. Thank you, dear colleagues.